Hey everybody, it's Tony from Adafruit, and I wanted to do a stream on the Raspberry Pi and an interesting piece of software that could be useful if you're trying to turn your Pi into like an internet thing, make it something that people can connect to and control. And so it's kind of related to the stream that I did on Friday, and I'll put a link in the description below when this video is up on YouTube. So you can see more details about building. I started a series on building a Pi internet thing, which would be just a device that does something and you can interact with using a web interface like from a web page. So the first part of the video was Friday, and we just built like a really simple Raspberry Pi Flask web application in Python, and we use that to control an LED, like you can turn it on and off on the web page and read the state of digital input. So real kind of basic hello world kind of example, but it's the start of something I'm going to do a few more videos on to look at, okay, how can we extend this and make it more interesting, do things like real-time updates on the web page of, instantly reading the state of digital inputs and things like that. So, we'll get into that, and this Friday I'll do another video. So for this video, though, I wanted to look at a neat little piece of software that could help an Internet Thing project like that. So it's a software, it's called netconnectd, which stands for like Netconnect daemon or daemon, which is just a process that's meant to run. And it's actually a part of Octoprint, which is kind of the really nice software to control 3D printers using a Raspberry Pi or other little small board computer. And so it's the thing that actually makes Octoprint use its Wi-Fi interface as an AP, an access point that you can connect to. So if you get Octoprint and you put it on a Raspberry Pi and you just boot the Pi up and you have a little Wi-Fi adapter, it will actually see that it's not connected to any network, and then it'll run a little wireless AP that you can connect to, and then you can connect to that and start controlling Octoprint. You can actually tell it like, okay, now scan for Wi-Fi networks and connect to a Wi-Fi network automatically on boot, and it'll remember that. So you reboot it and it joins that Wi-Fi network. So it makes the Pi into like a really nice little appliance, and that people don't have to know to go in and edit the Etsy network interfaces file and insert their WPA PSK value and all that kind of junk. It makes it a lot easier and simpler to do something where it looks to see, am I on the network? If so, then awesome. I'm just going to expose all of my network interfaces like I normally would. But if I'm not on the network, then I'm going to run this wireless access point, let people connect to me, and do different changes and things. And so let's see, we'll change real quick. Maybe let's jump to the desktop view, and I'll put also the face and the workbench in here. So let's jump to this view. So this is on the left here, just the web browser. In the upper right, so this is the software setup, and so this is the same software that I had in the Friday stream that I did. So just a little LED connected to this Raspberry Pi and a little switch, a digital input that I'm using, and so we'll use this, and I've actually got it set up. It's running the same code from the last Friday stream. So if I should be able to go to HTTP Raspberry Pi port 5000, so you can see it's running. I can click the LED on, turns on the LED over there. So everything's working great. Now netconnectd, so like I was saying, the main home page for it is this GitHub repository. So it's owned by the person who created Octoprint. Really excellent software, really cool thing that if you have a 3D printer, you should totally check out. This is a really nice little tool that was created mostly to fill this need, because there are other tools that manage the wireless networks and interfaces in Linux, but none of them are really built for this kind of need to make an internet thing or make an appliance that automatically uses like the wireless access point and things like that. More the other tools are more for like a laptop that's moving between a bunch of wireless networks, and it needs to find them and connect to them and remember them. This is slightly kind of different need, and so that's why this tool was created. And it's all written in Python. It's pretty straightforward to use it and interface with it. And I wanted to run through it. So I wanted to run through it using the Raspberry Pi 3 that I have here, which has the built-in Wi-Fi radio. So we'll see if we can get it to work with that. And also, as we go through it, you'll see that some of the steps you kind of need to change a little bit just based on how the latest version of Raspbian works. It uses systemd as a process manager, which is a little bit different from some of the stuff that Raspbian used to do when this tool was originally created. So I just wanted to kind of dive in. The goal of this is to get netconnectd running on this Raspberry Pi so that I can actually, because right now I have a network cable connected right up here at the top. And so that means, it's just got a wired connection to my network. It's easy, it's reliable, but I want to get to the point where I can just unplug that network cable and even not have it connected to any wireless network, and let it automatically start a little wireless access point, then I'll be able to connect to that like from my Macintosh computer here or from any other device, and use this as a basis for turning this thing into something that's more like an appliance that someone just picks up, plugs in the power, and starts using it. So it's a little bit easier to use and configure. So to start this, I'm just going to follow all the instructions in netconnectd's README here. Talks a little bit about the motivation, like why they created a new tool for this. Now to start with, we just have to install a few packages. So I'll copy out the ones that we need to install, and I'm connected here. I'm just SSH'd into my Pi. So of course, to bootstrap this, you've got to have your Pi connect to the network. So like I said, I've got a wired connection right now. So I'm just going to run these apt-get install commands here, and we'll get these packages installed. And so this is installing host apd, which is the host ap daemon, and that's the tool that actually knows how to turn your Wi-Fi interface into an access point that people can connect to and talk to. Because basically netconnectd, it doesn't do all that logic itself. It's just a wrapper around all those existing tools like host apd. The other tool that it uses is called Dns Mask, and that's like a real simple little DNS, DHCP server. Like, it gives you the bare bones to be almost like a router where something can connect to you, can get an IP address, it can act like a device on the network. So it uses those two tools, host AP and DNS Mask, to basically, act like basically your router so that things can connect to it. So okay, so we installed those tools. Now the next thing it says, we need to stop the host APD and DNS Mask services from starting, because netconnectd is actually going to control these services itself, and we don't want them running on boot, and because it might get into a weird state where they're running with their own default config, and then netconnectd wants to run them with its own config. So we just want to stop them entirely. And this is where actually the steps in the README are a little bit old. So they're written for the previous version of Raspberry, and the Wheezy version that uses the init.d initialization scripts. So in the kind of modern world now with systemd, it's a little bit different, and I'll show you the commands that we use to stop these from starting. So in the systemd world, systemctl is the command you use to interact with all the services. And so we can actually see systemctl status. Let's do host apd.service. And this tells us, okay, so there's a service called host apd. It tells us, this is the 802.11 management daemon. It tells us it's loaded, and so it knows, and it's actually telling us here's where the configuration for this thing lives. And you can tell by the path, this etc/init.d, that it's an old style init.d script, but that's okay because systemd can still use those older style scripts. And it tells us that it's active, and that it's, I guess it exited, so it's probably a script where like it forks off, in how it runs in a daemon mode. But what I want to do to disable this is basically do sudo systemctl disable host apd.service. And so now this is going through and deleting some stuff to say, okay, don't run this on boot. It shouldn't go. And then the same thing I want to do for the DNS Mask service here. So instead of doing this rc.d update, I'm going to use systemd to disable this. So we'll do sudo systemctl disable DNS Mask, ASQ. This goes through and disables that. And just to check, let's just do status on this again to show us. So this is telling us that it's still running right now, and I can turn it off in a second. But here's the important thing: it's disabled, so it's not going to run this on boot. And just to be super sure, I want to reboot the Pi because I want to see that these things don't run on reboot. So I'm just going to reboot now, because if they do run on reboot, then it'll cause all kinds of problems. Netconnectd is going to try and run host apd, and it's already going to be running, and things are going to overwrite themselves. So, and that's kind of one good tip. When instructions are pretty complex like this, break things up. Make sure that things are working the way that you expect. In this case, so all right. So the Pi should be rebooted here. So yeah, we'll reconnect, and then let's just run that status command and see. So it's telling us that it's loaded, so it still knows the service exists, but it's inactive, so it's not running and it's disabled. So this looks good. So we know the DNS Mask isn't running, and we should see the same thing for host APD. So yeah, inactive, not running, disabled. So everything looks pretty good for this one. So okay, so let's go on then. So then these instructions, they kind of tell you like, okay, here's how you can double check if they're going to start on boot. We don't need to worry about that. You know, we just told systemd not to mess with these. Now the next thing, this is telling us if you're using Network Manager, then you have to disable its own DNS Mask settings. Luckily, I'm not using Network Manager. It looks like Raspbian doesn't use that. And the way I can check is I'm going to look for this config file that they tell me to modify. So this etc network manager config. So if I do lsl etc network manager, then no file exists. So I must not be running network manager. But there is one little thing that I found that's not really mentioned here, but on the Pi 3 especially matters. And basically, because the Pi 3 has Wi-Fi built into it, when it boots up, it knows about the WLAN 0, the Wi-Fi network, and it tries to control that a little bit. So I don't know exactly what software they're using, but there's some Wi-Fi management. And so what we need to do is we actually need to disable the wireless network, at least so that on boot it's not automatically turning on. And because netconnectd is going to fully control the wireless network basically. So I want to go in and I want to edit the etc network interfaces file, and I just want to comment out this little section down here that deals with WLAN 0. So this configuration is basically saying that hey, there's a WLAN 0 device, and it's configured through like this WPA supplicant configuration. So I'm just going to comment this out so that it doesn't know about it anymore, and then save this file and exit. And then we'll go on and we'll kind of see why this matters in a little bit. The last thing this says is we need to add a timeout to the DHCP client. So we need to modify this file and add this little timeout in here. So let's do sudo nano, and we'll edit this file. And then we just need to go down. It's already in the config, it's just commented out. So we remove the comment from in front of there. So now we've got a timeout of 60 seconds. And so let's save that file. And now I just want to reboot because I've changed a bunch of config and I want to make sure everything's still working again. So let's reboot the Pi and make sure we're in a good state here and that all these new settings and things take effect in this case. So then the next thing we'll do is we'll do a quick test to make sure that host APD can run. And this is pretty important because that's what netconnectd uses to make the access point. And if it doesn't work, then you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to debug it. So it's easier to just try it in isolation without netconnectd trying to use it. Make sure that it works that way, and then come back and add netconnectd to the mix. So okay, so our Pi should be booted now. So let's connect back to it. So okay, so the next step here, it's telling us we need to make sure that host APD works. So let's create a little file, this temp host APD conf, and paste in some kind of example config for it. So let's just nano temp host APD conf, and we'll just paste in what they give us as an example. And this is kind of the neat thing, like you can pick what the name of the access point is, like what kind of security it has. So let's just say, sure, we'll keep the SSID as test AP. The passphrase, let's just give this maybe something easier to type in. So we'll say secret password, and everything else I'll leave the same. So we'll save this and we'll exit. And now we need to run host APD, and we're going to point it at that configuration file. And we just want to see that this runs and there's like no error message reported. So if I paste this in, so okay, I don't see anything like failing. Usually if something fails, it's going to send an error message and immediately quit. So it's running. It looks like it's doing some stuff. Now the big test, and let's see, let me hide the workbench in the corner up here. So let's check on OS 10, and actually I need to change one little thing. So on my machine here, I've got a, it actually has wireless, and so yeah, here we go. So now we can see here's my wireless networks, and I should see, yep, there it is. There's test AP. So my Raspberry Pi right now, that I guess you can't see, it's acting as a wireless access point right now. And so I can click this, and it's going to want to connect. And you can actually see, like, there's some output here. Something's connecting. And now it wants to know the password. And so if I put in secret password, then this should work. It should join the network. Now the problem is nothing on my Pi is acting like a router where, you know, like a router will assign an IP address to something that connects to a network. So at this point, like, I'm not getting an IP and I can't really talk to my Pi yet. But this is good. Like, host APD is running. You know, it's using the onboard Wi-Fi with the Raspberry Pi. Everything looks great. So I'm going to disconnect right now from this wireless network. And I found out a weird thing on OS X is that you have to hold down Alt and press the Wi-Fi, and then you can actually disconnect from something. I don't know. I think it's something in El Capitan that they added. So it is kind of neat, though, and that it gives you more debug info. So it's telling me, like, here's the IP address. And this 169, that usually means that your router or the machine you connected to did not give you an IP address. So your machine gave itself an IP address, like usually in that 169 range. So just kind of little gotcha sometimes if you're connecting to something you don't see it. So okay, so I'm just going to Control C to stop host APD. So that seems good. So host APD runs. You know, hopefully it should be smooth sailing as far as controlling it. So okay, so now we actually get in and install netconnectd software. So it's just a GitHub repository that we need to clone and then install some software that it has. So I'm going to run the clone command here, and this will just download all the source code for it. And then I need to go into the directory here. So if I go into netconnectd's directory, and now let's see, I need to run the Python setup install command. So this is just going to install all the Python code for netconnectd. And then there's one extra install that I need to do. So after this finishes, and let's see, yep, it's almost done. So okay, so that finished. So now I need to run the install extras, and this will go through, and I think that this will actually set up all the global configuration that netconnectd uses. So I'll run this, and so yeah, it tells me it installed things like, you know, this netconnectd.yaml, YAML. I think that's the main configuration file for it. So okay, so that's all installed. So now it's basically telling me that I want to edit this, etc. netconnectd.yaml, and maybe make a few changes. So let's open this up and see what it's got. So let's see, sudo nano etc netconnectd.yaml. And okay, so this is kind of the default configuration. It's telling me, okay, for my Wi-Fi network, use WLAN 0. For my wired connection, use Ethernet 0. Like, I don't need to change any of this. The link monitor, it's all commented out. I think that link monitor is basically like it can monitor in real time if you're on a wired connection, but maybe it's kind of flaky and sometimes it gets disconnected. It can look and see, like, okay, if it's been disconnected for long enough, fire up its wireless access point, you know, assume that the wired network isn't going to come back. It's disabled by default, and I don't know, maybe it's not super important, so I'll leave it disabled. It seems like even with it disabled, on boot it at least checks to see, do I have a wired or a wireless connection, and it'll fire up the access point if it doesn't. So okay, the access point configuration. So here we're basically specifying the host APD configuration, and I think it picks a lot of defaults. So things like the driver, these are commented out because I'm assuming it's going to pick this NL80211 driver, which seems to be the one that I need to use for the Pi 3. So I'm going to keep that. For the SSID, so this is where I can say, here's the SSID that I want this thing to use. netconnectd AP, I'll keep that. I mean, that seems like a good default one. You know, I could make that something more more custom. So here's my passphrase, like what's the password I want to use for this. So let's just put secret password again in here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change the AP name just because I had connected to this previously, and I think my Mac might still remember it. So just to make it simpler, let's just start totally fresh. So we'll say about PyThing AP, and we'll still keep secret password. The channel, all of this stuff I'm going to keep the same. This IP range, this is good to know because this is basically once something connects to that wireless access point, this is going to be the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. So if I wanted to access like a web page that was running on my server on the Raspberry Pi, I need to remember this IP address, and I'm actually going to copy it because I'm going to need it in a second when I connect to the Pi. But it's good to know that you can change this, you can control this. And if you have something like Avahi, which is the MDNS, the multicast DNS daemon, if that's running, then you can use, like MDNS. But sometimes it's tough. So like the way I'm going to demo this on my Mac, it's connected to my network through a cable, and then I'm going to use its wireless connection also. And it gets kind of confusing when you have your computer connected to two different networks. If you want to say like connect to Raspberry Pi, it doesn't really know like which network interface should I go search for Raspberry Pi on. Should I look on my wired network, which it's not going to find it if I'm connected over the wireless network. So just something to be aware of, that you might have some weirdness if you're connecting to two different domains or two different network interfaces. There's other configurations, so like you can assign a domain. That's kind of cool. I'm going to leave it all commented out. We're just going to keep things as simple and as close to the defaults as possible. So for the Wi-Fi configuration, there is one thing to change here. If your system doesn't run Network Manager, set this to false, this free option. So I'm going to set this to false because it doesn't look like I'm using Network Manager. And then this kill option, it looks like it uses this RF kill command to kind of reset the Wi-Fi adapter. So I'll leave this as the default. Everything else I'll leave commented out as the defaults. So let's save that and let's exit. So okay, so now it's telling us that we want to test starting the service. And again, here's where it's a little bit different because of systemd. So this is telling us to run sudo service netconnectd start. And I'm actually going to try that. Let's see what happens if I do this. So we're going to get failed to start, failed to load, no such file or directory. So it doesn't know. The service command can't seem to find this. And so let's see. Let's try sudo systemctl status of netconnectd.service. And it's telling us, okay, it's not found. And I think what we need to do at this point is actually tell systemd to reload itself and check that it can find all the configuration files. Because basically, when we installed netconnectd, it added its own little initialization script, but systemd hasn't seen it yet. It doesn't know about it. So we need to tell it, hey, go scan and see what's new in here. And I'm trying to remember, I think, let's see, there's a systemctl command that does this. It's like a reload daemon or something like that command that it's got. So let's see, I know I've seen this one before. So there's like reload or restart. This is for restarting services. We're looking more for different commands we can do. Environment commands. Here we go. I think it's this daemon reload command that we need to run. And if this fails, we can actually just restart the Pi because then systemd is going to check and see what's new. But I just wanted to see. I haven't run this command yet, so I don't know if it's going to fix the problem, but it's worth trying it out. So let's do the daemon reload. And yeah, that's the command. Okay, now let's see if I can actually see system. So okay, it looks like it works. So it's telling us it's loaded. It knows about this etc init.d netconnectd service now. So I should, in theory, be able to use that service command now. Let's see if that works. I'm going to go back up. So I'm going to run sudo service netconnectd start and see what this does. So okay, so something's happening. And let's see. And okay, so now I should be able to look at the log file, it says, and see, if it looks like it started up. So I'm going to copy this command, and we'll use less to look at the log file. So okay, it looks like it's running. So I can see some output here. No Wi-Fi configuration. It must know that I'm connected to the wired network, so it's not starting up the AP. So that looks good. And then let's see what else it tells me. So I can also run this netconnect cli status command. And so netconnect cli is a little tool that that netconnectd installs, and it's like a command line tool that lets you see, what's the status of the netconnectd service. So I'm going to run this, and we'll see what it prints out. So it's telling me, okay, so the AP is not turned on. AP is false. Wi-Fi is false, so I'm not connected to a Wi-Fi network. But wired is true, so that's good. So it knows that I've got a wired connection. So my Pi is on the network. It's telling me about here's the wired connection. And then if I was connected to a Wi-Fi network, it would actually tell me what was the network name and stuff like that. So that's good. It looks like netconnectd is running, but it's not really set up yet to run on boot. So I'll show you what we need to do for that. Or actually, well, let's check and see. Let's go back and run the systemd command the systemctl status of netconnectd, the service here. And so let's see what it knows. So okay, so it knows it's loaded, it knows that it's running, and let's see, I don't see anything in here that says disabled. So, and I haven't tried this myself, but let's just try rebooting the Pi and see if it works, see if it comes up and if it starts netconnectd in this case. So yeah, I just want to check, make sure there's nothing I'm missing here. So let's just try it. Let's do sudo reboot and see if this works. Typically with systemd, you have to run the enable command to tell it to turn on a service and make it run on boot. But because this is using these older init scripts, and systemd kind of tries to do the right thing and like look at those older scripts and make them work the same way that they used to work, it might just come up and work on boot. And if it doesn't, then we'll run the commands to manually make it enable the service. So okay, so let's run that status command. Let's look at it. Okay, so yeah, it didn't start up on boot this time. So it looks like, yeah, by default we need to do something to tell it to start up on boot. Now the instructions here, they tell us that we need to run this update rcd netconnect defaults 98. I'm going to skip this though because I want to start doing things more the systemd way. So let's try the typical way to turn on a systemd service. So let's do sudo systemctl enable netconnectd.service. Oops, what did this say? Oh, sorry, I misspelled it. I spelled it netconnected, not netconnectd. So okay, let's do that. There we go. So okay, just created some symlinks and things. So I think we should be okay. So now let's try rebooting the Pi and let's see what happens here. And hopefully when we reboot and reconnect, we'll see that the netconnectd service is running now. So let's see, we'll connect to the Pi here, and it just takes a second to reboot. One thing I love about the Pi 3 is it is noticeably faster than the other Pis at booting up. So okay, so now let's try that status command and see if we're running. And okay, this is looking good. So we're active, we're running. We can actually see it's running host APD. So it looks like it's taken over our wireless network and it knows about it. And it's actually, the status command is showing us a little bit of the log output for this. So things look okay, like it's running. I don't see that it failed. And so let's run that netconnect CLI command again, the status command, and let's see what it shows us. So okay, so it's telling us that it's turned on the AP, that the Wi-Fi is not enabled, that the wired connection is enabled, and that everything seems to be okay for this. Now the big test, and I haven't done this, I was having trouble with this earlier, so we'll see if it's actually advertising the AP. So if I check my wireless networks and hey, there it is, there's PyThing AP for that. So that's pretty cool. So okay, now here's something I want to do before I connect to this. Let's do a real test, and I'm going to unplug the network connection from here. So let's see, let me turn back on the bench shot. So I've got the network, the wired connection here. So I'm going to unplug this. Let's say I'll shut down the Pi, I'll unplug it, then I'll turn the Pi back on. When it boots up, it should see that there's no connection. It should fire up the host APD, like it should start running a little wireless access point. And then we're going to try connecting to it from the Mac computer here and see that things work. And before I do that, I want to copy out the IP address because I'm going to need to remember that IP address that it uses. So let's just look at that configuration again. That's sudo etc netconnectd.yaml file. Oh, I don't have permission to read it, so I have to do that with sudo. So let's just run this, and I just want to copy out that IP address again so that I can remember it because I'm going to need this to connect to the Raspberry Pi. So okay, so copy that out, and and I could change this to any IP address, like maybe something that's easier to remember, but I'll just keep it the default for now. So okay, so let's shut down the Pi. So, and we'll do total halt. I'm going to unplug the power. Also just beginner tip, always shut down your Pi like this. Run the shutdown -h now command. That's going to stop the Pi. You can kind of see like there's a little red and green light. And on the Pi 3, it seems like once it's done and it's finished shutting down the kernel, the green light just stays lit. So I wait for that, and now I'm going to unplug it. So now the Pi's unplugged, and I'm going to unplug the networking cable. So there's no network connection now for this Pi. It's completely on its own. And now I'm going to boot it up, and so we'll see what happens here. So as this thing boots up, it's going to run, it should run netconnectd, the service. I've enabled it all. Netconnectd, when it runs, it should see that there's no network connection at all, and it should fire up the wireless access point. And so I should see that Pi thing AP again in just a moment here after it finishes booting. So, I'll give it just another few seconds or so to go through it. And then so I should be able to connect to that from my Mac here. And my Mac, it'll be connected to both my wired network and the Raspberry Pi. And then if I give the IP address to the Raspberry Pi, I should actually be able to see my little Pi thing web page, because it's running on the Pi still. I have it enabled as a service. And so this is kind of like, the test of somebody has your Pi thing, they plug it in for the first time, and what happens? Can they connect to it? Can they actually control it? So, okay, I think we've given enough time. Let's go up and let's see the devices. Actually, let me turn off the bench in the upper corner here. So, okay, so we should be able to see the Wi-Fi devices. So, okay, there's PyThing AP. That looks good. I'm going to click on that. It's asking for password, so secret password. We're going to say join. Okay, it's mad about something, so maybe I misspelled it. Secret password join. And okay, I must have mistyped it. So we'll let this thing do its magic, and it looks like it's okay. So it finished up here. The icon stopped moving. Now I'm going to press Alt and click this. So okay, this is looking pretty good. So I'm connected to PyThing AP. I've got an IP address. It's 10.250.250.134, which matches the range of addresses that I saw in the configuration. So it's DNS Mask is configured to give out an IP address in this range. It's actually telling me here's the IP of my router, which is the Raspberry Pi. So that's kind of handy. I can know that. So okay, so here's the big test. Let's go to my Raspberry Pi, and I'll just show you. So even though my Pi has the host name Raspberry Pi, if I try and access it through that, it can't find it. And I think that's because my Mac is on 2 different networks, and it doesn't know which network I'm trying to search here. I mean, maybe there's a way I can tell to do that, but the easiest way is to actually use an IP address that's in the range that the Raspberry Pi router or the host APD is giving us. So if I go to HTTP, the IP address of the Raspberry Pi, port 5000, and we hit enter, and oh, look at that. We've got the Raspberry Pi webpage. And just to really test it, let me turn on the bench shot again. So we'll actually see, I'll click the LED on button, and look at that, the LED turned on, LED off, on, off. So we really are talking to the Raspberry Pi, and you can see there's no network connection here. It is the only way I'm able to talk to this Pi is because my Mac is connected to a wireless network that the Pi is hosting on it. So that's pretty cool. And I can SSH into the Pi if I want to through that. So if I do SSH Pi, and I have to give that IP address again of the Pi, so we can connect through this. Let's just put the Pi address in here. And this might fail because I had connected to this IP before, and SSH remembers kind of the host key, and it sees, yeah, the host key changed. This is an annoying thing about SSH. In an early video, I showed how for the Raspberry Pi host name, you can do a little tweak to your SSH config to make it not care about this stuff. But the easiest thing is you have to go in and edit the SSH config, the known hosts file, and you need to drop this little line here that deals with that IP address. So I'm just going to delete this whole thing. And I'm sure there's a faster way to delete stuff in Nano, but I've never looked at the key commands. In like VI, there's like DD to pull out a line of text. But whatever, I'll just hold delete. So okay, let me save this file, and now I should be able to SSH in without it complaining. So this step right here is where it's remembering. It generates a little a known host kind of footprint for the host you're connecting to. So yep, I do want to connect. We'll give it the password, and I'm connected to the Pi. So that's cool. So I'm connected through that wireless network. Now the really neat thing, and I'm not going to get into it in this video, but there's more to netconnectd than just running the AP. So it has some more commands we can use with that netconnect CLI. So there are other commands here. So there's like, I can actually explicitly start and stop the wireless access point, or I can have it list Wi-Fi networks that it sees and even configure it to say, hey, connect to a Wi-Fi network so that when it boots up, instead of running the host APD, try and connect to this Wi-Fi network. If it can't connect, then it's going to run the host APD. It kind of falls back into a safe state. So I don't know, let's try it. I haven't tried these yet, so maybe they work, maybe they don't. I'm kind of curious. But let's try some of these commands. So I'm connected to the Pi. Let's run netconnect CLI list Wi-Fi. And this goes through and this lists, kind of like we saw with the Mac, all the Wi-Fi things. Now the weird thing, I don't know if this is supposed to be JSON formatted output. I mean, it kind of looks like it, but it's not really JSON. It's missing curly braces on things. And I actually opened a bug on it. It might be by design. I think the way that netconnectd works is it actually has a little Unix domain socket that you can do inter-process communication with. And I think you can actually get these results by talking directly to that socket, and maybe you get back proper JSON output. The reason I mentioned that it's JSON is because, you know, I could imagine building this into my Flask application so that, you know, when it runs, it looks to see, okay, is netconnectd running, and, you know, is it connected to a Wi-Fi network? And if not, you know, maybe it can have a little page that renders and lists all the Wi-Fi networks so that, you know, during like this initial setup that I ran through, you know, I connected to the Pi's AP, and maybe I could have it load a little web page that says, okay, hey, you haven't configured me to connect to any network yet. Here's a list of all the networks. Do you want me to do that? And, you know, behind the scenes, Flask can just be running either these netconnect CLI commands or just talking directly to that little socket and telling netconnectd how to work. And so, and that's how it works in Octoprint. You know, it's running netconnectd, and it has a little web interface built around interacting with it. So, you know, maybe a future video I'll come back and we'll add that kind of interface to our Pi thing, because then we've got a really cool little, you know, first run experience of like you power on the Pi, connect to it, and then just totally through a web page tell it, okay, here's my wireless network, go and connect to it. You know, that's kind of maybe the dream of like a nice little thing that people can use. So okay, anyways though, so let's try and configure it to connect to my SSID. So let's see, I'm going to tell, there's a configure Wi-Fi command, so let's run this, and I need to tell it the SSID and the PSK, the password to use. So everyone, you're going to get to see my Wi-Fi password. So yeah, please don't steal and leech my network. So let's run netconnect CLI, and I want to run this configure Wi-Fi and Tony 2.4 101 Titacola. So not the most secure password in the world, but this is mostly for like if friends and stuff come over. So okay, let's run this. So that's it, configured it. So okay, let's reboot and let's see what happens. You know, I'm curious myself. This might completely explode. It might not work, but let's see. Let's just run reboot, and fingers crossed, the Pi should connect to my wireless network, and so I should see some results here, and we'll see kind of what happens. So let's see, and maybe as I wait, I'll check and see if there are any questions. Maybe throw them out into the chat. Let's see. Oh, so someone's wondering about like what are the hang-ups of getting the Pi 3 to be 64-bit at the OS level. I'm not super familiar, but I imagine they probably have to recompile a bunch of packages because they have, you know, the Debian repository, like Raspbian basically took that and just added their own packages. And so I'm assuming for 64-bit, they've probably got to have 64-bit versions of everything. So there's probably a lot of work for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's all just software tweaks. Like, just have to configure the OS, you know, okay, now run in 64-bit mode. But then at that point, you know, all of the packages you install have to be compiled for 64-bit. So, okay, I think my Pi, it should be rebooted. Unfortunately, my SSH connection is still kind of hung. Like, it didn't really close itself down very nicely. So, but just to check, I'm going to see, okay, so I don't see in my, actually here, I'll turn off the bench shot. I don't see my Raspberry Pi in the list of networks. I don't see it running that Pi thing network, which in theory, if it's connected to my wireless network, it shouldn't be running it because it's got a good connection, and it's not connected through the wired connection. So if I turn on the bench shot, you know, I didn't connect it again. So okay, in a new tab here, I'm going to go and let's just try and connect. Well, first let's just ping and see if I can ping Raspberry Pi. Okay, I can ping it. That's a good sign. So there's a device on my network called Raspberry Pi. Actually, let's just go for broke and let's try and access it through the web page. So we'll hit 5,000. That looks pretty good. It looks like it's connected. So now if I press LED on, then oh, look at that. It turns on, off, on, off. So that's pretty cool. You know, I've turned my Pi into an internet thing that has a standalone, nice little setup process. I mean, it's manual right now, and that I had to SSH into it and run that netconnect CLI command. But that's totally something you could automate in a little web app. You know, just have a simple little page that lists the output of netconnect CLI, list Wi-Fi. You know, show all the Wi-Fi networks in range, and then pick one you know, that you want to use in that case. And in theory, if I turn off my router and, you know, turn off that Tony 2.4 Wi-Fi network, the Pi should pick that up, and netconnectd should fire up host APD again and, you know, run an access point. I'm not going to test that because then I would break the stream right now, but it's, you know, it's cool that we've got that kind of functionality here. So I think that's all I wanted to do in this stream. You know, it's maybe I might consider this part 1.5 to the Pi Internet Things series. You know, I'm going to do a follow-up video on Friday. You know, we'll go further with software for it. So, you know, maybe one of the follow-ups that I might do is add netconnectd to the Pi, and, you know, I've shown how to set it up in this video, and then maybe we'll add a little web interface to it in a follow-up video so that we can kind of make this a little bit fancier and slicker kind of process. But I just wanted to highlight the software package. You know, it's really awesome. Seems to be super high quality. You know, it works pretty well. A little weird as far as how to configure it, just because of the switch to systemd, and, you know, it's still built to use the older init.d services. But it, you know, it's not too bad. And just the one big got you that it kind of tripped me up for a while earlier today when I was trying this out on the Pi 3 and even the normal Raspberry Pis, but they don't normally have a Wi-Fi adapter built in. You know, I had to make sure to comment out that WLAN 0 configuration in the etc network interfaces file. If I didn't do that, I noticed that on boot it wouldn't run. I couldn't see my host AP firing up. And I think there was like a race condition where netconnectd would run and it would try and create the access point. And then, like, right after that, whatever manages Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi was running, and it was probably like taking over the wireless interface and breaking whatever host APD did. Because I noticed, like, it wouldn't turn on boot, but if I manually started it, it was fine. So that kind of led me down the path of thinking, well, okay, maybe something's taking over the WLAN 0, and it looked like that was the issue. So, you know, definitely check this out. You know, I'll put links in the description below to the netconnectd project. You know, if you're building a Pi thing, I think it's great to check it out. It's a part of Octoprint, which is an excellent project that, you know, all of us really like to use with 3D printers. I use it with my printer back there. I have a little PrinterBot Simple Metal, and it's great for running the 3D printer here. So I think that's it. I don't see any questions. So let's see. Let's jump back to kind of the main shot here. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody. You know, subscribe to youtube.com/Adafruit, and you'll see this video and all kinds of other cool videos and projects. Subscribe to twitch.tv/Adafruit, and you can see the live stream of this and all kinds of other live streams that we do. We're pretty much doing like a live stream every day almost, it seems like. So, you know, lots of cool stuff happening here with Adafruit streaming. So thanks a lot, and like I said, I'll see people Friday. I'll do a follow-up video on the Pi Internet Things series. So until then, take it easy, and thanks for watching.